Good. This, I'm resident of Collinwood, and this is at _Barnabas Mark. We are here to do Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back review. Um, this movie starts off with a really great opening. How they're talking about the Empire, and we start off on the planet of, I think it's what, Hoth, with
Uh-huh.
and a bro. I love the snow. That's all I'm gonna say. I love the snow. What did you think?
Oh, I loved it too. I'm originally not too far from where you are, so snow was like a big part of us growing up. So um, I loved it right away. Snow is my favorite weather, so opening up with a snow planet was just I was into that.
What did you think of? They have Luke on this animal, and I love that they have a snow monster in this movie.
Hmm. Oh yeah, yeah. The what was it called? The Wampa, the snow beast. Yeah, that was pretty crazy. So I liked it, and I always loved the noises that the animal that he rides, the tauntaun. My brother and I used to, run around like stupid kids, and would make those noises all the time. But yeah, it was a great opening, and it was cool seeing Luke, um, as that he had advanced in rank and that he was, becoming a big part of the rebellion now.
Yeah, he's got a lot more to do with this. I like that
Hmm.
he's actually basically he no not basically he is enlisted in the military, enlisted in the
Yeah.
rebellion. I mean, he is flat out. He's went from sort of being somewhat a part of it in the first movie and sort of going out for redemption to
Yeah.
full blown soldier.
Hmm. Yeah, I think at this point they called him Commander Skywalker, so he was working his way up for sure.
Yeah, yeah, Captain Solo and Commander Skywalker.
Hmm. Yep, exactly.
I really love the chemistry here between Hamill, Fisher, and again you have Harrison Ford. They did not miss a beat in this movie. What are your thoughts on? I love how Ford goes out and gets Hamill's character. He goes out and gets Luke. He goes. The guy's like, "Hey, weather's coming." He's like, he goes, "My friend's out there." And he says something, and Ford's character says, "Oh, I'll see you in hell," and he rides out. I love that scene.
Dude, I love that. Yeah, he was saying that he was gonna, that he'll freeze to death before he finds him, and then yeah, he said that was great. I really like. You could tell in this movie that um, I'm not exactly sure. I know a lot of other experts would probably know this better than I do. How much time has passed between A New Hope and this one? I'm guessing maybe 3 years, just like in between the movies. But you can tell that they've been on some missions and things together, and they've really had a time to bond with each other. And that's one thing I love about Han is underneath that tough guy exterior, he when it comes down to it, he really does care. And I think that was a good way to kind of show that, and it made Han a lot more likable in this movie. Not saying that he wasn't in A New Hope, but it really pushed that a lot in this one, that he was a lot more likable and a lot more human.
I'm gonna compare Harrison Ford's Han Solo to a an X Men
Hmm.
character, Remy LeBeau, Gambit. I think there's a lot of
Hmm.
similarities between their styles
Oh yeah, absolutely,
because
absolutely. That's a comparison.
LeBeau, Remy LeBeau, is a card sharp. He's a chance taker, just like Solo is, and
Hmm.
he's very savvy around women, just like Solo. I mean, everything pretty much is there. The only difference is when Gambit touches something, he could make it explode when he wants to. That's
Yeah,
about, and
true.
and uh, and and Gambit's from Louisiana. He's a Southern guy. So,
Oh yeah, that is right. I forgot about. Yeah.
But what were your thoughts on? I like how when Mark Hamill's hanging upside down in the cave, and I love that he. This to me, it shows you how much he's learned with the lightsaber, how much of the Jedi powers he's sort of learned right away.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and I loved how he was struggling to try to reach his lightsaber, and then you see him just kind of relax himself, and he just concentrates on what he's doing, and reaches out, and you see the saber moving, and flying into his hand, and I loved how you know he I guess was learning to be less impulsive and just kind of relax and you know channel that energy that he had learned. So even in a dire situation where he could hear that thing coming, and you got to see some slow moving shots of whatever that snow monster was, however big it was, coming towards him, and you could just see him kind of relax and just calm down and reach and use the force. That was a really good moment, and it was just in time too.
Yeah, it really was. I like that Ford just, well, Hamill saves himself from the snow beast, but then you have Hamill out in the snow.
Hmm.
We get Harrison Ford's character saving Luke Skywalker.
Uh,
I love how here's the biggest myth with the Jedi. A Jedi, you don't have to be a Jedi to use a lightsaber because Han Solo uses one in Empire Strikes Back.
exactly.
I love it.
Exactly. A lot of people that would argue about that, but that's a fair point. That's what I always brought up too. And they were like, "Well, I guess," but I was like, "Nah, you can't argue that. Han used one, so you don't have to be a Jedi."
No, you don't. What they're really trying to teach people isn't so much to use a lightsaber, it's to use the force, the life force around you. You know,
Exactly.
sort of that's what the Jedi more try to teach you. And in the same sense, the Sith teach the same damn thing, just the evil version of it. And
Right.
I mean, it's crazy how similarities the Sith and Jedi are, and even Palpatine. We talked about this. Palpatine brings that same thing up a couple
Yeah.
times.
Hmm. Oh yeah.
Um, but yeah, for Harrison Ford's character Han Solo, they're in the Hoth, they're outside, and there's that animal that they were riding, and well, Han was riding, and it's laying on its side and stuff, and he takes the lightsaber and he cuts it open,
Hmm.
right away to sort of get Luke warm, and that's
Uh-huh.
ultimately what saves his life. So yeah,
Yeah.
you don't. Anybody saying you got to be a Jedi to use a lightsaber? No, that's a myth, man.
Exactly. Exactly. And one thing I really loved in that whole scene was seeing C3PO. You really get a good glimpse at him as a character, that he was, that he was worried and that he was trying to help Princess Leia. And I love the dialogue between Princess Leia and him when they were trying to be optimistic, but you know, 3PO's programming was telling him, their odds of surviving were very, very, you know, very long, and he was also trying to comfort her as well. So I thought that was a good character moment for C3PO, that he wasn't just an android that was just facts and figures and odds, that there was a little bit of a human side to him that we didn't get to see in the last movie.
I've always joked that you don't need to go to Vegas to get the odds. Just go to 3PO. He'll tell you the odds.
Exactly. And very precise too.
Yeah, really. Like, wait, why are you telling me that? That don't sound good.
Right, that's you're not helping 3PO.
Right,
It's no wonder Han always wanted to shut him down.
right. Oh my god. Um, yeah. I do really like. I agree with you. I like 3PO in this movie. Him and Leia's dynamic together. It's really good, and really 3PO is really I know, this movie. The first movie is about the droids too, and it has the droids have an impact more R2D2. But with this sort of feels like somewhat of 3PO's movie. Like you see a lot of him.
Hmm.
I'm not saying it
Yeah,
is. Sorry, I'm
go
not.
ahead.
I'm not saying it is his movie. I'm just saying you see a lot of him, and it feels like he's more of an impact in this movie.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, I always like that too because I've always loved C3PO. So anytime they can use him in a good way, and it works for me. It really does, and he really works for me in this movie.
what were your thoughts on seeing the bounty hunter in this movie?
Oh yeah, seeing are you talking about Boba Fett?
Yep.
Oh, okay, yeah, that was great. Um, he was just so cool and so smooth. It was like all of a sudden Han wasn't the smoothest character, and that's not taking away from Lando. We'll get to him, but yeah, it was nice getting to see Boba Fett, and when I first watched this, I was really little, probably not even 5 years old. So there were a lot of things that I picked up on later after I watched this a lot more times, and I didn't even know what a bounty hunter was uh, until much later. But yeah, it was really cool seeing Boba Fett. I loved his voice, and uh, I hated when they changed the movies for the special editions and after the prequels when they. Um, I mean, it makes sense that they got Django's voice back for Boba Fett, but at the same time, I really loved the original Boba Fett's voice. It was just so, um, it was so sinister. His voice was very, very sinister, and the look of him was sinister, and he just looked like somebody that you didn't want to mess with. And for somebody to outsmart Han Solo, like and I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, when Han was hiding from the Empire and he was, floating away with the garbage when they launched it into space, and then all of a sudden you see Boba Fett's ship light up out of nowhere and he's been tracking them. That kind of gives you an oh crap moment because Han is usually the smartest one in any situation, and then you see him outsmarted. So that was a big deal for me.
Really, Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back for me is the first movie that introduces the importance of the bounty hunters because
Mm-hmm.
they're not necessarily for anyone; they're for themselves.
Right.
I mean, I think that's the one misconception I hear from fans every now and again. It's, oh, the bounty hunters work for the Empire. No, 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 no. They're basically, if you want to do comparison, look up the DC character Lobo. Lobo is out for himself. He's in it for the money, and that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what these bounty hunters are in it for. They want the money.
Yeah, and they know the Empire pays big. That's a huge cash cow.
Yeah,
So
right.
yeah, yeah. So and for Vader to hire them himself and commission them, that's a pretty big reward.
I love the banter between him and Vader. Like, I mean, Boba Fett does not take any shit from Vader, and
No,
and Vader doesn't take it really from him. It's more like a banter of back and forth. Like, hey, hey, he better be alive. Like Solo better be alive in that carbonite. Like, I'm
he's
thinking,
like he's not gonna be dead.
right, right, and I'm thinking to this bounty hunter, dude, do you know who the hell you're talking to right now?
And I love how Vader was just so quick to dismiss what he said. He was like, "The Empire will compensate you if he dies. Put him in." So that was great.
Right?
How quickly he was dismissive of him. It was great. So and in a lot of ways they're not just um, well, I guess in a physical way they're very similar. They're both intimidating threats and armor and with a mask and you never see their faces. So that was cool getting to see them playing off of each other because they were so similar in that respect.
Yeah, I love. What did you think of Cloud City?
Oh, that place was gorgeous.
Right.
The clouds, especially inside, like the interior shots, and you see, the sunlight and everything coming through the window. It was, uh, it was so pretty. It made me think a lot of the Jedi Temple, like in the scene in Revenge of the Sith, when it always showed them looking out the windows and you could see the sunlight coming in. And there was just like this grand city that you could look out the windows and see. And it made me think of them looking out the Jedi temples and everything. And it was, I love Cloud City. And I love the music that plays in Cloud City, Lando's theme. It just seems like just such a cool place to be.
Yeah, Lando is really. What did you think of Lando here? The opening, him and I love how real quick that they're looking places to go, and he says about Lando systems, and like, well, what's that? What's that? Lando's not a what? It's a who? It's a man.
Right. Yeah, it's like, yeah, oh yeah, I think he said to Leia, he's like, yeah, he's a card player, gambler, and smuggler. You love him. She's like, thanks. So, yeah, it was, I loved Lando. He was just, I love Billy D. Williams. I've seen him in other things, and I love his voice, and just, he has just such a charming smile to him, and he's just like the smoothest guy you'll ever see on TV. And I love Lando. First impression, I loved Lando Calrissian. I just thought he was just such a cool character, and he's got you were talking about charisma. He's got a lot of charisma about him and a lot of energy, and he really steals the screen when he's on.
Yeah, he really does. To me, I agree with you. The person who stole this movie was Billy D. Williams. I mean,
Hmm.
flat out. I mean, good, bad, the decisions he made. He just, to me, other than the twist they reveal, and we'll get into that,
Uh,
he literally just takes this movie over, and I mean, in every way. No offense
yeah,
to Hamill or Ford or any of them, it just he really when he gets on screen, he literally commands it, and it's beautiful to watch. And real quick, Billy D. Williams, it, for the first Batman movie, he played Harvey Dent. If
yeah.
people forget that sometimes, man, I do wish they would have brought Billy D. Williams back to play Two Face.
No, I do too. No offense to Tommy Lee Jones, but there's just no comparison there. There is no comparison there with as far as on-screen charisma and energy. Billy D just can't be. You can't beat Billy D.
No, you can't. He just if you really want an ace to sort of Han Solo's Kane, to sort of use a poker term, it's Billy D.
Yeah,
Williams.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And a lot of people give Lando crap over this, but you know, the Empire was holding the city hostage and was going to. Lando knew what the Empire did and what Vader would do. So, it made sense that, there were a lot more lives at stake than Han. So it wasn't Lando just trying to save his own skin. He was over the city. He had a lot of people to think about. So, I think that was a really big moral conflict for Lando to betray well, he was sort of a friend. Um, but, yeah, I love Lando's character. I really, really do.
Yeah, he really. I agree with you. Like when he comes in to talk to Harrison Ford's character, Han Solo, after they've been tortured for absolutely no goddamn reason,
Yeah.
other than to get Luke to come to bait Luke,
Hmm.
and he really is just trying to let him know, hey man, this wasn't really something I wanted to do, but I had to. And I think by him
Right.
showing up, he's telling them that just you got to give credit for Harrison Ford too, because he's like, yeah, it may be, but I'm still pissed off at you for doing it. Like,
Well, yeah.
right?
Uh,
No.
oh, you okay?
Yeah. I was sorry. What did you think of the introduction of Yoda?
That really threw me for a loop. My brother had seen this movie when I watched it the first time. My brother saw this movie in the theater, and so he knew everything. Um, and my brother is almost 6 years older than me, so there was a bit of an age between us. So yeah, he said, "Yeah, that's Yoda," and I was like, I thought he was hilarious, and he was just like a big goof off, and um, just totally playing Luke, and if not knowing the prequels. Um, I never would have known that this was this little froggy voice guy that sounded sort of like Kermit the Frog, only a little more high pitched, was the greatest Jedi Master, of all time. He just was like this little tiny cute puppet that laughed all the time and was really jokey, and um, just nobody you would believe had seen the things that Yoda had done and was as powerful as he was. So that just that really threw me for a loop when um, Luke was inside Yoda's hut, and all of a sudden Yoda's face changes and his voice changes, and he gets a really deep voice, and he gets serious, and he's like, I can't teach him. The boy has no patience. And then you see Yoda's voice and his face completely change, and he turns into like a super serious, holy crap, this guy's like freaky, scary looking. And I think that's a big testament to Frank Oz as the puppeteer, and how you can make a puppet convey so many emotions and just do a complete 180 on your personality. Um, I just, it really blew my mind, um, seeing Yoda changing so much.
Yeah, I agree here. What they were able to do with this puppet, it was amazing. He doesn't. Luke goes to the Dagobah system, and
Hmm.
it, he crashes his ship pretty much,
Hmm.
and him and RDD2, they're struggling, and
Hmm.
they're talking, and then you meet this little green dude, and it's like, who's this dude? And he says, oh, I know Yoda. And I'm thinking, oh, how's this guy know? Because he is Yoda. But it's just, when he starts getting serious, I agree with you. The mood shift is just so well
Yeah.
done. It's there,
Yeah.
and it's beautiful.
Hmm. And you think, um, and this is something that Yoda says later on while he's training Luke. You think of Jedi, you think of very physical, powerful beings like we saw in the prequels. But if, for someone that hadn't seen the prequels yet, like you and I, when we watched this movie, seeing this little small creature walking with a cane that walked so slowly and was just this little thing, you wouldn't think that he was a Jedi master and as powerful as he was. And I loved one of my favorite lines that Yoda says. Um, when Luke was getting frustrated because he wasn't using the Force like like Yoda was training him to do. When he said, "Look at me, judge me by my size," and he said, um, my strength comes from the Force. It's not. And he, pinched Luke's arms, and he said, "It's not this crude measure." He said, "There's something else to us that's more powerful. That's not just your physical form."
Yeah, it really. This movie, it, you to me, this is where they lay the actual essence of what it is to be a Jedi.
Mhm.
Obi-Wan sort of talks about it. Yoda is explaining it. He's telling him the force. You have to. It's not about physical strength, like you said. It's about you know what's inside. It's you, the what's around you.
Mhm.
I mean, he literally, it's textbook everything he says, and I love it. Now, look, my favorite scene with Yoda and Luke is when they're looking into the woods, and he's like, "What's in there?" He said, "Fear," and he says, "Fear and stuff," and he goes to put on, "You won't need your weapon," and I do believe Yoda. I think what Yoda was trying to tell him, you don't always. That's not some. It's not necessarily your weapon you need. It's the your wits, your beliefs. And when
Mhm.
he takes his weapon, it's sort of you're sort of giving in to that temptation of the dark side. And I think
Right.
that's when you see Vader and then Luke lops off his head and you see Luke underneath, like that could be you. That's
Right.
you as easily as you were wanting to become a Jedi, you could become a Sith.
That's right. And I think it's interesting on that part, that Vader just walks in, you know, um, and Vader doesn't draw his weapon until Luke draws his first.
Yeah.
And that's that was something that Yoda was really trying hard to teach him. That um, you've just got to be careful because if you use the first blow, um, and you're the one that initiates starting down the dark path, then it can be a point of no return for you.
Yeah, the foreshadowing in this is beautiful. It's not overdone. It's just done right.
Hmm.
What did you think of Leia and Han Solo? They kiss, they fall in love, and the line of the century. She's like, "I love you." He's like, "I know."
Yeah, that was great. And it was odd, well, now knowing what we know about the the family connection between Luke and Leia, it was interesting, the how at the beginning of the movie there was the love triangle,
Right.
and you could get some tension growing between Luke and Han over Leia because she was kind of flirting around with both of them. You could tell she cared about both of them, and that made for some good tension between them. But ultimately, I've always liked Han and Leia um, together as a couple, and I love the moments of tension between them in the Millennium Falcon, and how we kept getting a little bit of a tease. They'd start to kiss, and then in that moment when Han was getting ready to, what she thought he could possibly die, she just threw it out there. You could tell it wasn't planned. She just said, she was trying to hold it, but then it just came out, "I love you." And then Han, just gave that great Han response, "I know." That was just perfect for him. I think if he would have said, "I love you" or "I love you too," that just wouldn't have worked for me.
No, he says it like a pimp. It's like I know.
Yeah, he does. That's perfect.
It's like
That's perfect.
it's like really, man. Like you could die, but okay. Like all right. Oh
I,
god.
I, I think at that point she would have expected no less from him. So I think that meant more, probably to her, because he was just being himself and not just saying something, in the moment that he couldn't, that he would regret later. So, yeah, I think that was a good line. That's definitely one of the best. And you may know this, but I've always heard that Han or that Harrison Ford ad libbed that line. Did you hear that?
I think I've heard this. I think what they were rehearsing this and they were trying to think of what for him to say. And they even said they felt "I love you" would be too much, and I think he did just ended up ad libbing the line. So I do
Hmm.
think that was all Harrison Ford just coming up with it on the fly. Like, yeah, I know. Like, and why not? I mean, hey, sometimes actors come up with stuff that writers just don't think of. I mean, you're trying to
Right.
get across that these two sort of have chemistry and they're in love, but
Hmm.
love is different variations too.
Yeah.
And that's sort of
Very.
the thing too. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think there was a lot of Spielberg in this movie? Because George Lucas and Steven Spielberg are friends, and
Hmm.
they Spielberg has been a part of Star Wars too, in a sense. And
Right.
when they're on the asteroid, they go into the creature's mouth, and it's sort of like a Jaws, like you're inside the mouth of a shark. It sort of
Right.
reminded me of Jaws. So, do you think there's like a lot of Spielberg in this movie?
Absolutely. And I think that George. Now that you mentioned that, that makes total sense. Because I do know that George asked Spielberg to direct this movie, and he passed on it. Um, and I think George went to Irvin Kershner. It was one of his teachers when he was in college, and he agreed to direct it. So I would think that George would, do something to appeal um, to Spielberg, or at least give him some kind of tribute. So I never thought about that though as Jaws. The creature's mouth that they went into. I never thought about that. That's a good point. That's a very good point.
Well, yeah, because here's the thing too. When there's two sequences that made me think of this. That have always
Hmm.
made me think of this. The Millennium Falcon is in the creature's mouth and you see the teeth. It reminded me of the like. Well, what if you were inside the shark's mouth from Jaws? That's probably what it would look like.
Right.
And then there's the sequence with on the Dagobah system where they have the fin coming out of the water, and I'm thinking,
Hmm.
man,
Right.
there's some nods to Spielberg in this movie.
Oh my God, I never pieced those together. Oh, I'm never going to watch this the same way now. You gave me a new way to watch this movie. I never thought about that.
I, I re-
Oh, that's great.
it's really interesting, right? Because I mean, they're
Yeah.
friends. You know what I mean? And it's like I'm just like, man, there's a lot of nods to Spielberg in this movie. I mean, they're there for sure, and it's nothing dull. It's really good to see. It's
Yeah.
well shot. It's just so cleverly done.
Hmm.
Oh,
True. I never thought about that and thought of the Jaws connection. That's perfect. That's a good observation. I never noticed that before. Not that I'm an expert or anything, but that's a really good observation. I never thought about that before.
I'm no expert either. We're just fans.
Yeah, true.
You know what I mean? That,
Oh,
what were your thoughts on this really good lightsaber battle between Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker?
oh man, that was tense, and I loved how we get it in sequences. Um, there's so much going on because everybody, they're together at the beginning of the movie, and they fight the battle of Hoth, in the snow, which was fantastic, by the way. And I love how they all split up, and so we get sequences of Luke fighting Darth Vader. Then it's going to cut away to Han and Lando and what's going on with them, and you have so many different things going on, and um, there was just a lot of emotion in this, and to me it was really tense because you knew that Luke was he left before he was supposed to, but I don't fault him for that because he knew his friends were in danger and that Vader was making him see visions of Han and Leia being in pain, um, to try to bait him out. But Luke wasn't ready to face off against Vader, and you're just kind of wondering. You're hoping he wins, but you don't know how he's going to. And you see Luke kind of getting the best of Vader at the beginning, and Vader's kind of toying with him. But then I think I think it's the third time they face off against each other. You can tell Vader's like, okay, I'm tired of this, no more. You're going to get all of me right now, son. So, and it's just on, and Vader's just absolutely no nonsense. That third time they meet up, he's had enough.
I think the one thing most of all with this, Vader's not trying to kill Luke. He's trying to trap him for the Emperor. And that's
Right.
that's why they sort of test the that's why they test the carbonite on. But and so once that doesn't work, you have this really great lightsaber battle, and it's I agree with you, it's really great. I love all the little sequences they do here. Just a very good back and forth. What are your thoughts on the twist?
Oh man, I think I can't. There's nothing new I can say that it's just one of the best twists ever. And when I think when I saw this for the first time, I'll be honest. I think because I saw these all out of order. The Empire Strikes Back was the first Star Wars movie I saw, and then a few years later I saw Return of the Jedi, and it wasn't until I was about 7 that I saw A New Hope. So I think the most shocking thing for me at the first time was seeing Luke's hand being cut off. That was my first time seeing anything like that, and I was just like, horrified looking at it. But once I really understood it a few years later, it's that scene still gives me chills. And I just turned 39, so when I watch that scene now, the way he says it and the swell of the music, it still gives me goosebumps, and it's still like a giant shock because Obi-Wan, we would think that he would ever lie to Luke, and he was saying that your father was this great man, that Anakin was such a good friend and was a cunning warrior, a great pilot, and Obi-Wan had painted this Sunday school version of what Anakin was like, and then for Luke to hear, no, I'm your father, and he said that Darth Vader killed Anakin, and it was just such a twist that completely turned everything that Obi-Wan said upside down on its head.
Yeah, I agree. It's something that we can't really put any further on because, and I love everything you said. I agree. And here's the thing too. When you had this movie, keep in mind George Lucas had hinted before that he was thinking about going with Princess Leia as the hero for Return of the Jedi. That long before Rey, there almost was a woman hero in this
Yeah.
series. So, and that's sort of what's interesting about that is if even after all this movie here, and I know we'll get it more into this with Return of the Jedi, it'd have been interesting to see if he would have went with that, but he didn't. But I agree, like the twist is so good. It's like, and I love what Mark Hamill does here as Luke Skywalker. He goes, Ben, why didn't you tell me? Why did you lie to me? He's questioning it. I mean,
Right.
and why shouldn't he? I mean, he's just been told one big lie that he just is like, holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that was just the only thing that he had, to know about his father, and he couldn't really. I mean, he would see Ben once in a while when Ben Kenobi would appear to him, but it wasn't really. He had no way of like confronting him and trying to figure it out and asking, why did you tell me this? And Luke knew that it was true. He could feel it in the Force that Vader wasn't lying to him. And I just can't imagine the emotions he was going through. Feeling like everyone lied to him, Yoda, Obi-Wan, and he just didn't know what to do.
Yeah, I love the emotion of Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill's character, and him and Princess Leia, C-3PO. I mean, Chewbacca. They are just literally left wondering what to do next, and that's sort
Right.
of where this movie just beautifully ends. I do got to ask you, do you think Han Solo should have died in this movie?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so. I think keeping him alive, was something good. I didn't want Han to die, and just from a fan's point of view, but from a storytelling point of view, I think it was wise to keep him alive, and um, because Han would, I think it means more if Han dies for something, and for Han to have died, and that way would have felt a little cheap to me.
Yeah.
What do you?
I've always been mixed on this
Mm-hmm.
because, and I'm not trying to jump into Return of the Jedi because that's going to be a whole nother video, I promise.
Yeah.
But Return of the what they did with him in Return of the Jedi really, outside of saving his ass, past that was all but pointless. I mean, there's almost no point for him to be in Return of the Jedi. Everything
Mm-hmm.
he does there, they could have had either Chewie do or Lando. And and what I mean by that is, other than Kiss Leia, obviously, you know what I mean? But that's sort of like the only reason he's there is because he's went from being, look, he's still a good character in the movie in Return of the
Oh,
Jedi. Don't get me wrong, please, and nobody that watches this, please get me wrong. But he's
right.
not. He's more Leia's love interest in the third movie. He's
Mm-hmm.
more, the jealous lover, and it's just like, wait a second, like, like, and I get why. But so I've always been yes and no on this because of,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily because of Empire Strikes Back, but more because of Return of the Jedi and what they did or didn't do with him there. So I guess I would lean towards yes. I wish they sort of would have killed him in this movie because
Mm-hmm.
I just feel, I don't know, I've just always felt that ever since I watched Return of the Jedi as a kid, I'm thinking, man, what the hell is Han doing here?
He's being underused.
Right, right, right.
Right. No, I get you, man. That's fair. I totally get you and understand.
I like though that you would have him live because it's like anytime I say no, people just like, oh yeah, I agree with you. I'm thinking you don't got to.
Right. Right. Yeah, I like for him. I like for him to live because it was, I guess it was a good plot device for them to, in this movie they all got separated and were tested in their own way, and I thought having Han back at the end, that was a good way for them to get back together and kind of regroup and
Right.
um, have a reason to go, to go looking for him. And it was a good segue into Return of the Jedi when it was getting ready to start. And uh, I would have preferred for him to live. I'm glad that they let him, but you bring up a totally valid point that there where he is underused in Return of the Jedi. Maybe it would have packed a lot more weight for his character to have just ended right there. That's a totally fair point.
I do like there's one thing that they do good with him in Return of the Jedi. They basically have the Ewoks fall in love with him. I mean, seriously, that is the best thing I've ever like. I'm like, holy shit, the Ewoks love Han Solo.
Yeah, they put him as part of the tribe. He's like, yeah, that's what a always wanted.
Right, right. I was just like, I'm like Han Solo's in charge.
Yeah, exactly. He leads the Ewoks. That's great. But the I was going to ask you something. Oh shoot. Um, what did you think of the? The first movie ended. Um, there was room for more storytelling, but A New Hope ended. If they would have left it there, it could have ended there. It wrapped up nice and neat. What did you think about ending on a cliffhanger like this?
For Empire Strikes Back, Empire Strikes Back. I don't know what it is about this movie. Every time I watch it, we've always talked about. We've been talking about ever since we started doing these that sometimes the Star Wars movies don't feel as long as they should, and
Yeah,
that's sort of how I feel about Empire Strikes Back. It doesn't the like it doesn't take away from the movie, but it just feels like there should have been more into this. And again,
hmm,
the twist is sort of they're leaving you with a gut punch, and I get it. That's it's sort of leave them wanting more, which is the idea. But at the
right,
same time, I'm going, man, they really could have did a lot of more shit in this.
right, right. I know some people, and George Lucas has said that this is his least favorite of the original trilogy. That he thought that this was the worst one, and I know a lot of people that said that they've when they went and saw it in the theater, that they were left scratching their heads at the ending because it just they felt like it was too abrupt, and there was just so much that um, got so many questions came up near the end, and it ends so abruptly, and they had mixed feelings walking out of the theater when they saw it, that they felt like there should have been a little bit more to it in the last act, and they were just kind of wondering what just happened. So because so much fell apart for the rebellion at the end, and it was just there was just a lot that happened at the end, and it does cut off and end abruptly like that.
I think the one thing I'll say though too is this movie. It's more this movie isn't just so much about the twist. Yeah, it gets to that, but this movie is about what Vader really wants out of the dark side and
Mm-hmm.
what Palpatine and really Palpatine is more in front in this movie as to
Mm-hmm.
where we saw him in the first one, but he is in the next two films basically it's sort of like it's the same thing as the first trilogy. You meet
Uh-huh.
Palpatine, then he's somewhat he's there, he's there, but the next two movies he's more of a focal point. Well, same
Yeah.
thing, and the original trilogy, which this was when we were kids because we're old. This, this, this here, well, it's the same thing. You meet Vader, you meet Luke, Leia, you meet Han. Well, then you meet this Palpatine guy who's the Sith Lord, and it's like, man, this dude is like sick. And then the next two movies, he's sort of out in front, sort of like the focal point, especially in Return of the Jedi, which we'll get
Uh-huh.
into. But that's sort of how I feel with maybe why this is a shorter movie is because we're getting a lot of sort of points from all sides. We're getting the Emperor more in this movie. We're getting Vader a lot in this movie even more. I mean, because Vader comes on Hoth. Vader storms on Hoth looking to kick ass. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I, I,
Yeah.
you know, and that's sort of the thing too. And we get Luke, we get Yoda, we get a really really great outer space action too in this. We get a lot of the great outer space chases in this movie is really really
Mhm.
good.
That
So
asteroid.
right, exactly. agree 1000%. So even though this movie's short, like feels short, it doesn't disappoint. That's just how I felt about it.
Mhm. Yeah, this is my favorite of, and I know a lot of people say that, but this is my favorite episode in the Skywalker saga. I've I've always loved this one. This was my first one, and there's so much substance to this one, and a lot of emotional punches, and a lot of great action. It's very fast paced. You have a lot of battle scenes. The battle on Hoth. Um, so you get to see a lot of great battles. Then you see personal battles with um, Han in the asteroid field, and Han and Boba Fett, and then Luke versus Vader, and it's just there's so much emotional weight to this movie, and it's to me it's a perfect movie. I love it. I do wish it could have been longer, but yeah, for me this movie is a 10 out of 10. I can't really find any faults with it other than I just wanted more.
Yeah, I really can't either. I have nothing really to complain about in this movie. I agree with you. It's a straight 10. I mean, it's literally. I know George Lucas. We're sorry you hate it, but but we love it. I mean, it's really good. The twist is great, but even before you get to the twist, just the action. It's intense. It's very. This movie, and I'm sure George Lucas is familiar with this name. It's very Val Lewton esque. It's very fast paced. It moves at a quick tone, and it just keeps going and going. It this almost feels like we know there's music in Star Wars. Well, this Empire Strikes Back, it's almost like it's moving to the pace of the music.
Yeah,
That's sort of what how I'll word that. It's moving to the pace of the Star Wars music, fast, quick, and fluent.
hmm I definitely agree. Definitely agree on that. And one thing that I really thought was interesting, and I was wanting to get your opinion on this. Something that when Vader had Luke trapped in Cloud City, and he was saying, together we can destroy the Emperor, and why don't you come with me, and together we can rule the galaxy as father and son. I thought that was something how Vader was, you know, he really has, we see him kneeling before the Emperor, but he really has no loyalty to the Emperor at the same time.
I think that here's how we agree that Darth Maul was more committed to the dark side.
Yeah,
Darth Vader, aka Anakin Skywalker, is the equivalent of a spy. Once a spy turns on his own, you can never trust that spy. So therefore,
right.
Anakin turned on the Jedi to join, the Sith Lord because he wanted to save Padme, which we know that turned out real well. Uh, but sarcasm. But then he becomes Darth Vader because Obi-Wan kicked his ass in a fight, and
Right.
now he's doing the same thing to the Sith Lord that he did to the Jedi, turning on them. Meaning, once a spy turns once, he's susceptible to turn again. So
Right.
he's not really trustworthy. So that's not, to me, it's never been a shock. And by the way, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Who do you got in a fight, Darth Maul or Darth Vader?
Who do I think would win?
Yeah,
I would. I would probably say Vader because he's stronger in the Force.
yeah.
Um, but if it was on, you know, if the Force powers were restricted and it was just, fighting ability, absolutely Darth Maul.
Yeah.
Darth Maul could dance circles around him um, and beat him, just in my opinion. But I think with Vader being able to use the Force, I think he was stronger in the Force than Darth Maul was. I think Vader would win, but it would be a great fight. I think it would be close.
Yeah, I think I love what you're pointing out too, because a lot of the things you're pointing out, Qui-Gon was pointing out that Anakin's ability is more about the Force, not so much about the lightsaber. It's more about the Force itself, and that's something I feel. I agree with you. If he's Force powers, yeah, Vader's gonna win. But if this gets down to just a lightsaber battle, yeah, my money's gonna be on Darth Maul too. So
Same, because and that's one of the things that I loved about Darth Maul and really shocked me about it the first time I watched him because Vader, and this isn't a dig, but Vader was more machine, so he was more of an intimidating presence, like the Terminator. He was slow moving, and he just had an intimidation factor. And whereas Darth Maul was just like a ninja, and he was just all over the place, and that was uh, that was like a whole new kind of threat. Seeing Darth Maul just all over the place, and the skills that he had, and he was so quick. He wasn't slow moving. He was you blink and you miss him.
yeah. He was one of the most stealth Siths you ever saw. I mean, he
Yeah.
really just amazing. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I agree. He was something else, and not taking anything away from Vader. But yeah,
Right.
so is there anything you want to add, man?
Um, I can't think of anything. I think we touched on a lot of the movie. We pretty much touched on everything that I can think of.
Yep, we have wrapped this bad boy up. We are going to schedule Return of the Jedi for you guys. And it's always fun bringing Mark on here. He's a great guest. He's got a lot of insight on Star Wars. Link's going to be in the description box for his channel. If you want to check him out on Twitter, he's at @I_Barnabas. What's your other Twitter handle, man? I always forget it.
Oh, it's okay. It's 1981 MAG.
Okay, so at 1981 MAG. Check him out on Twitter. Really, really cool dude. Just a pleasure to bring you on, man. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, and happy Halloween.
Yeah, happy Halloween to you too. Watch out for Michael Myers.
Will do, man. Take care. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Have a happy Halloween, man.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.